Hi, everyone. I'm Lara Lomicka Anderson. I'm a professor of French and Applied Linguistics at the University of South Carolina. And joining me today is
I'm Stacey Benoit, and I'm head of English at Ecole des Ponts et Chaussées, just outside of Paris, France. And we're really excited to be part of L2 Digital Literacy Symposium this year. And we look forward to virtual exchanges with some of you. And our session today is going to focus on a project we started 9 years ago that uses virtual exchange to connect two classes, a French class in the United States and an English class in France. And this session reports on the project that uses digital collaboration to link technology, theoretical and pedagogical design, and practical experience. And it fosters intercultural communication and critical thinking and builds international communities between the two countries, the United States and France. So we're briefly going to walk you through the project, talk about the tasks, how we framed them, and the theoretical underpinnings behind that. And we're going to leave you with a few implications for teaching and practice.
So to begin, we wanted to just walk you through our theoretical framework, which we use not only to frame our task, but also our project in general. And we chose this because we wanted to really focus more on community participation and on communal learning, as they're both important to digital collaboration. We implemented a variety of collaborative tasks, group projects, and activities, because successful collaboration can help students to be better citizens and community members, as well as help them to be valuable in the workplace.
So virtual exchange is a term that's quite new, but the practice isn't new. So it's basically an educational exchange using technology to allow people who are geographically separated to interact and communicate. And it promotes engagement in online intercultural interactions and collaborative projects. And it's often situated in educational programs as a way to increase mutual understanding, global citizenship, digital literacies, and language learning. And there are different models which include telecollaboration, online intercultural exchange, globally networked teaching and learning. And our project uses virtual exchange as a way to connect learners across the Atlantic using online intercultural exchange. And we've attempted to summarize and include some extra information in the slide for you to consult.
So virtual exchange works hand in hand with participatory culture. There's a continuous collaboration to accomplish goals, to share projects, and to establish social connection with others. And there are really four things that we wanted to promote in our tasks that we developed for this project. And those four things include digital critical exchange, intercultural learning, cultural awareness, and digital literacy. So we used a couple of different technological tools to do this. One is the Slack tool to develop and promote digital and critical exchange and digital literacy. And then the other tool that we used is Siftr with a Liscant framework to promote intercultural learning and to promote cultural awareness.
So our project, the Raison d'être project, is a collaborative exchange between the students at the University of South Carolina, at the Honors College, and Ecole Nationale des Ponts et Chaussées, which was founded in 1747. It's one of France's most prestigious graduate engineering schools. And we have about 2,000 students who specialize in diverse programs from civil engineering to industrial design to city planning. And as part of the RD program, the students engage in virtual exchange for 6 months, and then they embark on sort of a linguistic and cultural site visit to the other country. So participants in this project engage with each other virtually through Skype, email, Siftr, and Slack. And we find that these tools benefit these language learners by simulating virtual opportunities for study abroad and prepare them for the international travel. It enhances their global awareness and increases their language proficiency, both in writing and speaking. And so for this presentation, we're going to talk about two of the online tools that we've used that are quite innovative in terms of digital collaboration. So digital collaboration and language learning has made it possible for students to interact with native speakers of their target language from around the world in real time. And so it manages to allow a reciprocal peer-based exchange using a diversity of rich and meaningful language materials, and fosters a culture of collaboration and sharing. So the students are able to work together towards a goal that's predefined, and it also allows them to build groups and communities. And publishing students' work opens up their work to those beyond the classroom itself. And it's really changing the way that we engage in our teaching and in our research.
So I want to talk about two of the tasks that are part of our collaborative project, and those include the tools Siftr and Slack, and we use both of them over the academic year in 2019-2020. And they can be used both on a computer as well as an app from a device. So the first one, Siftr, is a social photography app, and we wanted to use this with the Lescant framework. We'll talk about Lescant in a minute, but the Lescant framework helps to promote intercultural learning and cultural awareness for students. And so their task was twice a month to post an image that they captured in their environment and to share it with the class and beyond. So they were able to geolocate the images and write short descriptions about how these images fit into the environment based on the Lescant framework. The second tool that we use is Slack, and Slack is a threaded discussion tool that allows students to post a critical response to a prompt. And we often use this in conjunction with news stories or topics that were happening in the world at that moment. And so students would read the article either in French or English, and it was a relatively short article, and then they were able to then respond to a prompt based on what they read in the article and then interact with the other students, their classmates. And so this type of activity promotes both critical exchange as they're able to reflect on and share their thoughts about a topic with others. And it also helps them to understand digital literacy, where they can find and sift through that information, evaluate, and then communicate it, which makes use of both cognitive and technical skills.
So let's talk a little bit more about Siftr. So with Siftr, the students were able to capture digital images, and then they geolocated them on the Siftr app, and it produces a customized map, which we'll see in a minute, of their personal and group experiences. So it's kind of a social photography activity where students were able to notice and reflect on their surroundings and then create sort of a vast network of shared places and practices, which is accessible to a broader audience as well. So using these categories based on an intercultural framework as well as short descriptions, the students were able to work together to analyze the images and interact with each other through their comments, both in French and in English.
Okay, so this kind of shows you what Siftr looks like and what students would see as they're posting. And you can see the map is there, so they can find where they're trying to post to, the location. And you can see on the right-hand side of the slide that the different categories that are represented in Lescant, and we will talk about that in a minute, they're there for students to choose the category. So as the teacher, you're able to pre-program this a little bit so to make it easier for students to choose or select different options that will go with whatever they're trying to post and geolocate in Siftr.
So to give you a little bit of background on Lescant, so it was a framework that was created for international business by David Victor back in 1992. And then it was implemented in language and intercultural business context by Orlando Kelm in 2011. And there's 7 areas of the framework which promotes intercultural learning and cultural awareness and allows students to justify what they find in a particular category. So they're able to use both reflective and critical skills in technology, which provides an audience for their work.
So here's what students see when they upload a post. They are prompted with this screen where they're able to find and drop the photo into the section. And then the next step would be for them to actually choose the category of Lescant that they would want to use. So they might recognize or notice something very different about the language. And so they might then mark that post as language and explain what it is that's different or unique about the language that they see. And this could be language that's on a sign or in a restaurant or somewhere else that they notice it. And so they have the option of choosing the category and then identifying that choice with the photo that they upload.
So here's some examples of the students' work in Lescant and with Siftr. So the picture on the left is an illustration that an American student took in a French school, a French elementary school that she visited in France. And she noticed this person wearing a red vest. And she wrote that she thinks it's likely that it signifies something similar to the meaning in the US where students are selected to monitor the school or the classrooms. And that implies a role of authority at the school. So several of the students interacted with her, asking questions and offering responses to that. And the picture on the right are some French students visiting, it was a thrift store, an American thrift store on their visit to the US, and they were surprised at how big it was, at the size of the store. And so an American remarked that it was quite hip for French people to be going to that type of store in the US. And the French students don't have the same types of thrift store or shopping experiences that are quite popular among college crowds in the US. So they thought they were in the right place to have come there. So the exchange in both languages in the chat on the right is quite an interesting mix of the intercultural experience and also the language experience.
Okay, so we just talked a little bit about Siftr. The other app that we used to promote this digital collaboration is Slack. And Slack allows students to really critically analyze perspectives on current events and cultural topics. It's similar to traditional text-based discussion board, but integrates a more social media type of look and feel, including allowing visuals and videos and other shareable items. And so you can kind of get a sense for what that looks like here. But as a common organized virtual workspace or classroom with Slack, students are able to discuss contemporary themes and interact in real time with the group. And this project helped to guide students through collaborative learning that resulted in virtual exploration of various topics.
So here's what Slack looks like. And you can see that each category on the left, each channel, as they call them, is like a forum for threaded discussion. So you can direct message someone, you can react to what others have said and respond to them. You can create new channels for the whole group, or you can select some of the group members and create a channel just for them. You can add links, which would go to an online text or video, etc., and then have students react to that.
So I don't know that we mentioned that both these tools are free and available to use, and they're pretty easy to use as well. But here's an example of a post in Slack. And as we are preparing topics for students to discuss, we try to base those topics on 3 broad categories of communicative activity. And so one of those categories is information exchange tasks, and that's where partners exchange information about personal biographies, about local schools, towns, or aspects of home culture. Then we also have comparison and analysis tasks, which are a little more demanding than just the information exchange, and partners have to dig a little bit deeper into comparisons and critical analyses of cultural products from both cultures. This could be books or surveys or films or music or newspaper articles. And then finally, there are collaborative tasks where partners work together not only to exchange and compare information, but to produce a joint artifact or reach a joint conclusion. And so this kind of task can be prompted from an essay or a presentation or a linguistic translation or cultural adaptation of a text.
So here are some of the examples from the exchange and the discussions in Slack. So giving an example of information exchange, which was a discussion on college tuition, and there wasn't a lot of negotiation of meaning, but there was, they were able to sort of get a cultural sensitivity and intercultural skills from that. So it was prompted by a slideshow from the New York Times, and they discussed the price of tuition in France and in the US and gave prices, and exchanged a lot of cultural knowledge just as an information exchange. And then for the comparison and analysis tasks, there was a discussion on gun control, which went quite a bit deeper. It was a real critical discussion on the gun control laws and measures in different countries, and some very personal perspectives. And the students were really able to compare and analyze their partners and their own cultural perspectives on that hot issue. And then the last category for our collaborative task example, the learners exchanged and compared information on animals, and then they worked together to help their partners create and adopt a pet ad in their target language. So we had all kinds of different pets, and the collaborative zoo allowed them to comment on the ads and adopt their favorite pet. But we haven't had the opportunity to explore these tasks in this medium, and we've used Padlet and Mentimeter, and also during a survival role play in Skype, much more so than in Slack, to work on a collaborative task.
So we want to kind of wrap up and leave you with a few takeaways from our project. First, when we think about digital critical exchange, it really helped to facilitate ways in which students exchange perspectives, how they learn from each other, and it allowed them to really delve into stereotypes a bit more. The second thing that we noticed is using the Lescant framework with Siftr was a really great way to promote intercultural learning and to help students notice things that they might not typically notice, and then reflect on those things that they might not typically observe. And so having them focus on those different categories that are part of the framework allow them just to be more aware of how these images that they're seeing, not only in their own culture, but in the other culture, what they might mean and represent. Third, we designed tasks to help students explore their cultural identity and behaviors, and their own identities as well. And our observations showed us that the students worked together through these projects and through taking pictures and commenting on them and responding to each other and looking at different perspectives. And they became more open and aware of other cultures and also of their own culture. And then finally, digital literacy really helps students to appropriate ways to analyze, to interpret, and to make sense of all the information that comes to them. In our project, students were able to learn and use new tools. I don't think our students had used either one of these tools before, Slack or Siftr. And then to make sense of their learning, which led them to have these really deep and great discussions around cultural awareness. And through documenting what they see, and analyzing it with others and having this conversation around the images that they were documenting, the conversations that they were having, they were able to identify intercultural learning and really document their cultural awareness.
And so being part of a digital collaboration project that was framed around participatory culture, we observed that students were much more engaged with their learning and more connected with their peers, even before they actually met after the international travel. And during the time that we're in right now with the pandemic, our students having been involved in virtual exchange and in continuous discussion and virtual projects made the shift to online and synchronous learning without much difficulty, since we were already involved with asynchronous or synchronous formats. So I would say it's a good time to begin thinking about virtual exchange and the possibilities that it can offer you in your class.
So we'd just like to thank you for being with us today for just a short time, and we look forward to both asynchronous and synchronous collaboration with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.